Doesn't Dr. Manhattan also have a floppy disk?
He's got an extra floppy disk. At one point, he has four floppy disks. Welcome to the Tairimo Boys podcast. I'm your host, Cody. With me in second chair is the man who has the doctorate in blue dong physics. It's Jeremy.
I can't say I'm an expert, but welcome everybody.
Expert, you're a doctor in it. With me in third chair is the man who watches the Watchmen. It's Ryan.
What's going on?
Today's episode, we're going to be watching some Watchmen ourselves by watching Watchmen.
That's a tongue twister,
I pulled it off perfectly.
right? Say it 3 times fast.
I don't even remember what I said. Something about watching Watchmen. For anyone who doesn't know, Watchmen is an older comic book series, and it was a short running one, so it's not like Batman or Superman, which gets rebooted like 2 or 3 times every year with a new series. Jeremy, do you know when the comic first came out?
I actually do not.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
It ran from 86 to 87.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so it's, 35, 36 years old?
Yeah.
In the movie,
2009.
yep, 2009, so 9 plus another 15, so about 24 years later. The comic was, it was written by Alan Moore, is that correct?
I believe so.
From what I heard, Alan Moore fucking hates this movie.
Alan Moore hates every movie, specifically ones based on his work. That man is a cranky wizard or warlock or whatever he is.
I know it's crazy because I've read some things about him seeing like scorpion creatures or something.
As one does,
Ryan, you need to lay off the shrooms.
but they're so tasty.
Reviewing Watchmen, not Mario.
Right. Right.
Jeremy is our residential comic book expert here. I asked him before. Jeremy was the one who recommended this movie to us. He's been showing off his comic book collection, and I assumed he had read the comic, but right before we started recording, I found out that Jeremy only owns the prequel comic.
Ta-da! Yes, I only own the prequel. However, I love this movie so much. I would like to read the graphic novel. I know there was some stuff that was left out. So it's on the to-do list.
Certainly.
This movie is what actually brought it to my attention. I knew of the Minutemen, but I had never read any of their comics, and I'd never read anything about the Watchmen prior to the movie.
Yeah, we'll get into all that further in our review for anyone who doesn't know what the hell we just talked about. Funny story. We all watched this together. We were told that this movie is about 2.5 hours. Well, whenever we watched it, we found out it was like 3.5 hours. So apparently, we watched the director's cut version of it.
Yeah, we watched Watchmen, the Snyder cut.
Most definitely.
Yeah, Zack Snyder was apparently doing Snyder cuts before Justice League.
He was doing Snyder cuts before Snyder cuts were a thing.
So let's get into it. Jeremy, what are your first thoughts on this movie?
Dark, gritty, fun,
Is it
certified.
Oh, yep. So it's certified Tairimo Boys fun.
Absolutely.
What about you, Ryan?
I enjoyed it. It was fun in some spots, not so fun in other spots.
Like,
That's not bad. That's not a bad thing.
is it
Sorry.
certified Tairimo Boys fun?
It's certified Tairimo Boys fun, ish.
Ish. Hold on. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's not copyrighted. I'll get right on that once we get done.
Yeah, I'll send you the forms.
We got to jump on that.
So this was my very first time seeing the movie, and once I got done watching it, I've been kind of kicking myself because I
You
hate
missed
that.
one of the greats.
Yeah, I hate that I never bothered to watch this movie. It kind of every once in a while it popped on my radar, but I never got around to watching it because like I found this movie really good. I kind of know where maybe Ryan's coming from. So Ryan, were the things you hated in this movie the characterization?
Some of it, I suppose.
What were your major gripes?
My major gripes. I don't really know if I really had any major gripes. It's a
Minor gripes.
minor gripes. I have read this comic before a long time ago, and my gripes are towards the end, but we won't get there yet.
Yeah, well, so the ending of this movie blew me away. I've kind of read up on what's supposed to happen in the ending, and normally with our Retro Boys review, we just go full spoilers. But I've kind of set a rule in place that with this movie, we're gonna give everyone a heads up once we get to the third act. If you don't want to be spoiled, so you can go watch it for yourself, because the third act blew me away, and I know exactly where Ryan's coming from because I kind of read what actually happens in the comic book because they do deviate in the third act. Now, for my first thoughts, like I said, like I've kind of mentioned with Ryan, I love something that has like a lot of characterization that goes out of its way to characterize everything. Jeremy, did they do this much characterization in like non-director's cut?
Yeah, pretty much, from
In
what I
Whedon
remember.
cut,
Because that's usually what they add whenever they start doing director's cuts. They chop out characterization and then they start adding it later.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time on characterization in the original cut.
Paid off because like I said, I love characterization. It's like why I love season 1 of One Punch Man, because of the characterization it does with the Class S heroes. Then you get to season 2 and it does way too much of it.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of that.
But we're not here to talk about One Punch Man. Other than
That's a review for another time.
Ryan's like, pass.
Hard pass.
Now, this movie, what it is about is it's alternate history. You get up to about World War II, and that's when like masked superheroes start taking off and masked villains. The government ends up shutting them down, and then later on another set rises up before Vietnam breaks out. The U.S. ends up winning Vietnam with Mr. Blue Dong himself. And Nixon somehow bypasses the constitutional amendment that only allows a president 2 terms to get a third term. And it wasn't mentioned in the movie, but I know it from the comic book series that the comedian killed the Watergate reporters.
So you're saying the president of the U.S. cheated to get his third term. He also used basically God to win the Vietnam War.
Yep. But
That was an epic scene. That was an epic scene, though.
This movie had a lot of epic scenes in it. But like
It did.
Yeah, the main idea besides the alt history is all the heroes, they've been shut down and they've realized like, yeah, humanity's sick, and there's got to be a way to. Some of them just given up, and others are like, maybe there's a way to fix it because we're in the Cold War, and with Nixon as president, him and I think it was Gorbachev it was Gorbachev that was in charge of Russia at the time. They're getting ready for all-out nuclear Armageddon. So let's get into the movie. Like we've already mentioned, we watched 3.5 hours of this movie. There's a lot to the movie.
So buckle in, everyone.
Like I mentioned, eventually I'll give a warning for spoiling the third act with a lovely song like I like to do. My impeccable singing voice. Let's get started. As we've been talking about the comedian's a superhero. Well, whenever you think of Watchmen, you think about the like cover of it, where you've got the yellow smiley face with the blood dripping down it, and the reason for that is what we see in the opening of the movie. The comedian who's like retired because he's old and all the superheroes have been shut down. He's sitting at home, smoking a fat one. Someone shows up at his door. Person wants him dead. Brawl ensues, and you could tell.
Brawl. A very, very intense brawl.
Yeah, you could tell right away. Like the comedian, he's like easily punching holes through walls and throwing knives around. So he doesn't have superpowers, but he's like peak performance type deal. And despite this, the would-be assassin just kicks his ass and throws him out his high-rise window, and he falls to his death. And all that's left is a splatter on the pavement and his button, this little smiley face button that he kind of wears in his non-golden age outfit with his blood running down it.
Which, this is not a spoiler, but you will see this reference throughout the movie. And in case you didn't catch it right away, that is the reference to 5 Minutes to Midnight. Even the blood splatter on the smiley face.
Okay, I did not even think about that, but
Yeah. That is the reference point, and you see it throughout the movie.
But as Dr. Manhattan says in the movie, yeah, the whole fucking 5 minutes to midnight clock is like giving a drowning man a picture of oxygen. So, hero ends up dead. Well, former hero. Everyone else retired, or in the case of what's his hero name? Is it Ozymandias?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're not gonna be using his hero name anymore. We're gonna be using his actual name, Adrian, because they only say his like name like his hero name like once or twice.
I'm just gonna call you Johnny.
So Adrian, and did like the second Night Owl also reveal his identity?
The second Night Owl? No.
Okay,
The first Night Owl, yes. Because he published that book.
yeah.
Or a book.
Hold on, let me get into that a little bit more. So, like after the comedian's death, we were basically shown like a kind of a clip show of like everything leading up to this. We go back to like the 1940s, maybe it was 30s, 40s, where whenever Cape superheroes first started, and we see the Minutemen form, who the comedian's one of, and the original Night Owl, a bunch of other superheroes. They're not actually superheroes. They're just you're explicitly told that these are just police officers and random people who wanted to be vigilantes, and the government kind of runs with it. Over the clip show, you're watching them get killed. It's mentioned later on in the movie that one of them, whose name is Dollar Bill, he ended up getting his cape stuck in like a revolving door, and the criminals just shot him to death.
I've always wanted to be a superhero, and that is exactly what would happen to me.
Well, Ryan, that's why you take the Incredibles approach. No capes.
No
Keep that
capes.
in mind.
And now we know.
Knowing is half the battle.
Like I went and looked to like in the Wikipedia after watching the movie, and basically what happened was the government got tired of the shit and forced all the heroes to either before I guess it was Congress and it was like a congressional hearing and demask themselves. So the comedian didn't have to because he was working for the government, and that's how like the Minutemen eventually dissolved, and that's how like the original Night Owl he demasked and he eventually wrote a book on the whole thing. But speaking of the the big thing is we watched the comedian over the years. Apparently, he was working for H.W. Bush, and he was the one who assassinated Kennedy. He fought in Vietnam. Whenever the Watchmen formed, because apparently the whole thing that shut down the Minutemen didn't stop the Watchmen right until Congress did something else. But he was part of the original Watchmen. Through this, we see that we get introduced like to all the Watchmen right away. We get Dr. Manhattan, who's the magical blue naked dong guy.
Which you see plenty of.
He'll say he's not God, but by the end of the movie, you've kind of realized like, yeah, this guy's got like godlike powers.
He's as close to God as we're gonna see.
But his whole character arc is that he used to be like a normal guy and ended up getting caught like a scientific experiment. Was basically zapped to cinders, reformed himself, and came back as like a godlike being who's like disconnected from humanity. So his whole character arc is him trying to I don't know if you'd say cope with it or trying to connect himself with humanity. He just kind of like fucks off from humanity, and then he has to be brought back. Next up is Night Owl, number 2. As we mentioned with the Minutemen, there was an original Night Owl. Night Owl is kind of like Batman. He's got gadgets and a ship. And where's a Batman like S costume?
Nail on the head.
He was basically mentored by the first Night Owl, and they're really close. Next is Silk Spectre number 2. Her mother was the original Silk Spectre in the Minutemen.
MILF Spectre.
Cherry has a certain type. But she kind of followed in her mom's footsteps and ended up on the Watchmen. One of the big things is she's dating Dr. Manhattan because he's attracted to her for some reason, which we'll get into later in the movie. Then we have Adrian. Something I gotta say is I suck with names. Everyone should know that by now. So everyone just calls him Adrian through the movie. He is known as the smartest human in the world, even though Dr. Manhattan's got all this godlike knowledge going on and physics knowledge. his power, like, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe even Ryan knows, like, his power's, like, really vague. It seems like, yeah, he's smart, but he's got, like, really good reaction time and, like, maybe heightened senses.
Yeah, I never understood what his powers were.
The same, besides from being the smartest man. He
Yeah.
is a beast.
You get to see him fight a few times in the movie, and it's like bullet dodging and the type of thing, like, you can't lay a finger on him. It's got to be like trained or something, because when I was doing some research on the Wikipedia, he at one point in time, like after he joined the Watchmen, he fought the comedian. The comedian kicked his ass, so he didn't start out with like these like heightened senses. Then we get the final member of the crew, Rorschach. If you don't know what Rorschach is, that is those like black and white, those ink splotch paintings, like a psychiatrist will hold up. But before I go any further explaining him, let me explain the Watchmen a little bit more. So Watchmen formed, they were doing hero stuff, and Nixon and Congress ended up passing an act which made superhero vigilanteism illegal. Adrian kind of went into public life. Dr. Manhattan went to work for the U.S. government, and the comedian was always on the U.S. government's payroll. So there was all that. So it was just, oh, and Silk Spectre was dating Dr. Manhattan, so she was always with him. So it was really just Night Owl and Rorschach that didn't reveal themselves. Night Owl the second retired and kind of just went and lived a normal life. Rorschach, on the other hand, and the thing about his character is he did not retire. So throughout the movie, he's like a wanted vigilante. It's expressed right away that he's a wanted criminal on the FBI's most wanted list. The big thing about Rorschach is he's principled and willing to die for his principles.
Absolutely.
I think a good comparison is if you're familiar with the Justice League series, like off of the 90s animated series, a good parody of him is The Question, which is the guy wearing the detective outfit without the face. So, Ryan, who was your favorite character?
Rorschach.
Jeremy, who was your favorite character?
Rorschach.
Cody, who was your favorite character? Rorschach.
I mean, there's so many reasons to love Rorschach, though. How could he not be? Okay, a better question would be, okay, who's your guys' second favorite character? And yeah, that'd be a better question.
Ryan, you want to go ahead with that one?
The comedian.
Jeremy, do you want to go ahead with that?
Damn it. Okay, the comedian.
Cody, do you want to go ahead with that? The comedian.
Shit, we should have asked third favorite. Good grief, just going down the line.
All right, that's enough. I don't know about you guys, but I consider Rorschach to be the main character of this because it seems like they spent the most time on him. Would you guys agree?
It's told through his eyes, pretty much.
Yeah. They get into his past a little bit, but it's just him like trying to find the comedian's murderer. So even though the comedian's like killed in the opening scene of the movie, throughout the movie we're going through flashbacks like the Watchmen and Minutemen's history and just watching it through his eyes. Hey Jeremy, without getting into the third act, what were the major differences in between the director's cut and the theatrical version? Do you remember?
From what I saw, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, anything with the Black Freighter, that whole animated Black Freighter stuff, that was not in the theatrical version.
Yeah.
What about the kid reading the comic book? Was he in there?
I believe I remember the kid, but it didn't go into what the comic book was. Like, it showed that scene, like, where he's reading it with the newsstand, I believe, or reading it at the newsstand, but it didn't go on to that spin-off, which is the Black Freighter.
I actually did a little bit of reading on the Black Freighter, and it was someone trying to get, like, a DC to do, like, a spin-off comic book series or an animated movie. Because here's the thing, this world has, like, superheroes and supervillains in it, and superheroes are viewed by the public as, like, enemy of the people in here. So there's one scene where there's like a huge riot breaking out because police are doing some kind of protest and the Watchmen end up stepping in to quell the riot with Night Owl and the comedian. And Night Owl's in his ship, like trying to get everyone to peacefully disassemble, and the comedian's hanging on outside of it with a fucking shotgun in his hand. And then whenever someone throws a Molotov, the comedian just jumps down like go time, starts kicking everyone's ass, and at one point takes out a fucking smoke bomb, like grenade launcher, and like shoots the guy with it.
Great scene. Great scene.
That's like the comedian's like character arc. You see him like just he's supposed to be the superhero, but the guy's like a piece of shit. Night Owl's like trying to get him to like stop attacking like the protesters, and like he even says like fuck this, like we're about to get outlawed anyway, so might as well go down. And since he's like a fucking federal asset, like he knows he's not gonna get in trouble.
Oh, also, I wanted to mention, since we were on the subject of the Black Freighter thing, without spoiling anything, Alan Moore said it was an analogy of Adrian, the story of Adrian.
Now that I think about it, I think that stuff is on the extras of the Watchmen DVD.
Like I was saying before, I got sidetracked by a really awesome scene. Superheroes are perceived as like villains to like the people, so they're not gonna so people aren't gonna want to read comic books about superheroes. So the idea behind the Black Freighter is this pirate comic book is like huge, since people aren't reading about superheroes. But there's also another analogy in it, which I'll get into in our whenever we start talking about the third act. Basically, what happens is, and like I absolutely I love the whole Black Freighter comic book scenes because I knew where the story was getting. Like it's like right before they did the whole twist with it, it's like I even called what was about to happen. But
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Ryan, did you catch the twist before it happened?
I did not, but I am the least observant person on the entire planet, so that's to be expected.
Did you catch who the villain was?
Some dude named Earl.
So what happens is there's like this ship of the dead full of zombie pirates called the Black Freighter. This ship captain ends up getting in a naval battle with them because the ship's supposed to be like, of course they're like evil zombie pirates, and the ship captain loses his entire crew and gets stranded on a desert island. He realizes like the Black Freighter's probably gonna go to my home and kill everyone in town and my family. So he's like, I need to get off here. He's able to put together like a makeshift raft, and he uses the corpses of all his crewmates, or I guess since he's the captain, they would just be his crew, and forms a giant raft out of them. His second in command had a sail wrapped around him with a blood splatter on it that is very important later on at the end of the movie. And, foreshadowing, there you go. He gets on the raft, sails off, gets attacked by sharks, barely makes it back to his home, where he's kind of viewed that the Black Freighter had to have come and killed everyone in town while he was gone. So he lands on the shore. He sees like this money lender trying to fuck like a prostitute, like by the beach shore, kills the guy and the prostitute. The moneylender had to have sold the people out. Why else would he have been alive? So he goes back, and that's when we start seeing he gets on their horses and heads back to town. Puts the prostitute on the other horse because there has to be two. And where he's coming back, he's like, "Oh, there's a pirate sentry here," and it's revealed to be a scarecrow. And he's like seeing like the corpses of people, but it's just like an ordinary tree and a bunch of like, I guess they're called boyos, that are just like normal. And he gets back to his house. There's no one there right away. He's attacked by a shadowy figure, and it turns out that the shadowy figure is his wife. He ends up killing her while his two daughters watch. He goes outside and realizes like everyone's still alive, and the Black Freighter never attacked the town. And the whole idea was the Black Freighter didn't need to attack the town. The captain turned himself into a monster, and the Black Freighter was just waiting for him to become a monster in order to have him join their crew.
Moral of the story: drink rum, not salt water.
Maybe he did drink some salt water, so maybe there's some hallucinations going on there. But like, I think you kind of just start vomiting right away. Your blood like turns solid, and you kind of die. You don't go crazy and start killing people.
I vomited every time I ingested salt water, so.
Well, did you kill anyone?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, that's good to hear, Jeremy.
I'm a good boy.
back to the movie. Besides the things that were added.
There's your extra hour.
Yeah. It really wasn't even a freaking hour of like. I mean, it's unique too because like it's done in this like animated style, and the rest of the movie it's real life actors. So I've got to ask, Ryan, what was your favorite scene?
My favorite scene was Rorschach in the prison when the guy's hands get sawed off. But I'm a sick fuck, so that's to be expected. Also, we used to quote the "I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me" quote all the time.
Oh shit, you did that too?
Yeah.
So we'll get into that a little bit here later. What about you, Jeremy?
God damn it. Same exact scene. I love the whole prison scene.
So the prison scene is kind of complex because it's a whole bunch of pieces. But specifically, what I loved about the prison scene is when Rorschach's talking with the psychiatrist. He's like he's telling the psychiatrist like, yeah, here's how I became a monster. But let's get before we get to the prison scene, let's talk more about the plot a little bit. The big thing in this movie is it's kind of jumping between characters and their stories are like constantly intersecting. So Dr. Manhattan's working for the U.S. government, and Adrian's has his own business. They're both trying to find a solution to the Cold War nuclear war problem, nuclear Armageddon problem. The solution they've both come to is if we make a way to get infinite free energy, then we can, since there'll be no more resource problems, like everyone will just live in peace. At one point in the movie, Rorschach goes to the comedian's apartment and investigates his death. That's when we learn that he's a wanted criminal because he never unmasked himself, so he still has his like secret identity. And like you unknowingly constantly see him throughout the entire movie till he is finally unmasked. Like I figured out right away who he was. But Rorschach investigates and like realizes like yeah, someone with superhuman abilities went and killed the comedian because the comedian's pretty superhuman himself. You don't throw a man like that out of a reinforced window. So he comes to the conclusion there's someone out there that's going to be murdering heroes. They don't get much into it, but that's a little bit what happened with the Minutemen. That's apparently that's more in the comic book series where they were getting you see them getting killed over the years, but they don't go much into it like they do in the comic books. So Rorschach goes to Night Owl's like, "Hey, are you gonna help me?" And Night Owl's like, "No, I'm not gonna throw away what I have." Of course, Night Owl goes to Adrian and warns him. Adrian's like not concerned. Then at one point, an assassin goes after him, and we see the assassin kill a bunch of people around him, but we see Adrian's like superhuman powers that aren't fully explained in action, where he ends up subduing the assassin. The assassin dies from a cyanide capsule. Then we get into Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre. Dr. Manhattan's disconnected from reality. Well, he's disconnected from humanity. He's developing a solution for the energy crisis with Adrian. Silk Spectre is dating him, and their relationship's like really rocky. But the big thing about Dr. Manhattan is just how disconnected he is from humanity. He's trying to stop this nuclear war thing for Silk Spectre, but Silk Spectre is like, yeah, I can't stay with this guy long term because he's just so disconnected. And we see this like over the entire movie. When Silk Spectre like breaks up with him, what she does is she takes like a part to the reactor he's working on and just throws at him. He like goes into like ghost mode, and it goes right through him and just crashes through a TV monitor that he's talking with Adrian with. Then he uses his powers to undo the whole thing. That's really big that he would undo that. Jeremy, what didn't he undo?
You tell me.
Ryan, what didn't he undo?
My heart.
That's Ryan saying he doesn't know.
No, I don't.
So, like I already mentioned earlier, Dr. Manhattan won Vietnam. Vietnam had been dragging on for a little bit, and Nixon ended up going to Dr. Manhattan to stop the whole thing. The comedian had been fighting in Vietnam, and he was quite enjoying himself because, like we've been mentioned before, he's a psychopath.
Oh yes.
So in 10 days, Dr. Manhattan wins Vietnam. You see him; he's giant, just using his powers to instantly blow up like any soldier standing in his way.
One of the
And
most epic scenes of the whole movie.
yeah, and so he's giant, and the comedian's like leading the charge in battle. Like at one point, he's got a flamethrower, and the comedian's always smoking his like fat cigars, and he lights up his cigar with the flamethrower, and then immediately turns it on this like Vietnamese soldier who has his leg blown off and is clearly surrendered, and the comedian just tortures the guy. We learn that the Vietnamese wanted to surrender in person to
God.
yeah, Dr.
I mean, Dr. Manhattan.
yeah, Dr. Manhattan. But that's the big analogy in this movie. Dr. Manhattan's partner at one point said, like, "Oh, we've got like a Superman in our mix." Like that's like his famous quote. But like whenever he's doing like an interview, he's like, "I've been misquoted on this." Like I actually said we've got a god in our mixed. Mist. I can't. What's that word?
Midst.
Midst. There you go. There's a D in it. But when the Vietnamese are surrendering, they're basically bowing to him like they're worshiping him like a god. And Dr. Manhattan says, like, I am not God. Like, I'm just someone who's kind of ascended like time and space. Now, the reason we're talking about this Vietnam scene is, and after that scene where he undoes the destruction of his like TV communication monitor, is
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, you see where I'm going.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
Dr. Manhattan and the comedian are celebrating in a bar that Vietnam's now over, and this Vietnamese woman who's like 8-9 months pregnant comes up to him. Like I absolutely love this scene because we see like in the present and all the scenes after Vietnam that the comedian's got like a huge fucking scar on the side of his face. So pregnant Vietnamese chick comes up to the comedian. He's like, "Oh, now we can live together now that the war's over." He's like, "Nah, babe. Sorry, I'm going back home." She's like, "You're not gonna fucking abandon me." And like, "Here, I'm gonna give you something to remember me by." She breaks a bottle and just slashes him across the face with it. While like Dr. Manhattan's like just sitting back trying to like de-escalate the whole thing. And the comedian just like in a fit of rage, like, "You fucking bitch, you scarred me." He takes his gun out and just fucking shoots her point blank range. Like Dr. Manhattan's just standing there like, "Why did you do that?" And the comedian just completely flips out at him. Like, "You've got like no humanity in you. You could have stopped the bullet, you could have destroyed the gun, but no, you let me kill her. And now you're freaking out about it." So it just shows you like the comedian's a psychopath, and Dr. Manhattan does not, he pretends to care about humanity, but he really doesn't. That's the whole scene. Like he undoes like the destruction of his TV monitor, but he doesn't like he doesn't stop or like undo the lady's death. And that's like just some of the clever writing in this movie. So let's get into Rorschach, shall we? The Rorschach portions of this movie. When it comes to like all these characters, they don't get too political, but Rorschach is someone that gets like really political. Now, I know in the comics I was reading, and like a big thing about the Minutemen is like what sides of the political aisle they line up on, because their deaths and all that usually line up with how they how they live through life. But Rorschach, he's like you could tell he's right wing. He's constantly calling out the left, and he sees that. Let me take a step back here. Like I mentioned earlier, with all the heroes. The big thing is that like all these heroes are realizing like society's just fucking rotten in some way, and Rorschach is like basically the epitome of this. Adrian and Dr. Manhattan are looking for fix for like the how sick society is, like with nuclear Armageddon on the horizon, and Dr. Manhattan is only doing it for Silk Spectre. Adrian has become a businessman, so maybe like probably just doing it to save his own ass. Silk Spectre's just only cares about dating Dr. Manhattan until they break up. And when they do break up, Dr. Manhattan's like, well, I've got no reason to stick around. One of the things we figure out is when Dr. Manhattan's doing like a TV interview, everyone it was associated with his past ends up with cancer. So maybe he's giving people cancer. This combined with the fact that Silk Spectre is like no longer interested in him, he decides like, yeah, fuck off. Like I don't care about humanity anymore. He fucks off to Mars to do his atom glass thing that he does. So they really don't care about being like superheroes. Night Owl, he gave up just to protect his ass and stay out of trouble. Rorschach, like I mentioned, he's the only one who stayed a vigilante, and now he's wanted by the police for it. So he doesn't get a comfortable life like Night Owl or Dr. Manhattan and all them. He's dealing with the grime of society and doing what everyone should have been doing. And that's like his big thing. Like he's even mentions like, yeah, society's like rotten to the core. And we see that throughout the movie. There's a lot of boobs in the movie. I just want to mention that. Very important fact right there.
Very important fact. A lot of assets are shown.
And he even realized like drug use is out of control, murder's out of control. Society's just rotten to the core, and something needs to be done about it. But if someone's going around killing like masked heroes, that's a threat to him. So they need to do something about it. So there's like this old villain who fought like the Minutemen, especially the comedian back in the day named Moloch.
Hey, you got a name right.
Yeah, well, I'm very familiar with the other Moloch. I'm just saying it right in here. I denounce Satan. I denounce Moloch. So Rorschach, when he goes and visits like Moloch's long retired, and he's living in poverty. One of the things he realizes is Moloch is getting like a pension check from a company called Pyramid, and Moloch is a supervillain, so he hasn't really worked at a place in order to be getting a pension. So that's something worth checking out. Some other note is Rorschach's like looking through like all his shit. The big thing about Rorschach is that he's thorough in his investigations. Like he's going through Moloch's like stuff, all his stuff, and like finds like this illegal like pills in there. And Moloch's like, yeah, I've got cancer, and like that's how I've got uncurable cancer, and that's how I deal with it. So it kind of leaves like a little question up in the air of society's broken, and this guy's got cancer. He's using illegal drugs, but why is society letting this guy be in pain like he is? So that's kind of the morality that's questioned in this movie. But what ends up happening is Rorschach ends up going back to Moloch later and finds that he's been assassinated, and basically he walked into a trap because as soon as he sees that Moloch's been killed, all the police are outside his door ready to arrest him, and SWAT teams. So you get this like really epic escape scene where you see Rorschach's hand-to-hand combat where he's able to fight off like SWAT teams, but just the numbers of the police with nightsticks just eventually overwhelms him, and they end up demasking him, which is like the most important thing to him is his mask, since now his secret identity is gone, and they throw him in prison.
They took his face, Cody.
Which gets important later on. So let's get into Silk Spectre and Night Owl.
And like Night Owl said, let's get into Silk Spectre.
So throughout the movie, we see that Silk Spectre and Night Owl are close to each other. Even though Night Owl never gave up his secret identity, the U.S. government knows because they're always watching Silk Spectre because Dr. Manhattan has the powers of a god, and if Silk Spectre is dating him, if she cheats on him, he might just decide to destroy the entire planet. So
a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Silk Spectre is always having lunch with Night Owl. Of course, as we saw like earlier in the movie, like Night Owl has no interest in doing any more of the superhero shit. As soon as Silk Spectre leaves Dr. Manhattan and escapes from the government, she goes to Night Owl and it's like, hey, I just need to get away from all this. So they're like, hey, let's go to our usual cafe and like have lunch. Like as soon as they leave, we get kind of like a mixture scene between Dr. Manhattan doing an interview where we learn that everyone he's ever been associated with is getting cancer, and he starts freaking out and realizes that he has like no reason to care for humanity anymore. He doesn't care about humanity, and he's been a blight on people he's been close to. And while that's going on, Night Owl and Silk Spectre are like ambushed, like out of costume in an alley by this like huge gang of ruffians. As it's like cutting back and forth between the interview and them, like we're just seeing them like completely beat down the criminals.
It was a great beatdown.
Some just end up with broken bones. Others, their lives are lost.
Yeah, some of them weren't so lucky, were they?
Especially the guy who knifed in the neck and
Yeah.
shot in the back. You start seeing Night Owl be like, yeah, I miss being a superhero, even though with Rorschach he told earlier that he really doesn't miss it. But they go back to his place, and Silk Spectre is in his owl cave. And
Freudian slip there. And his Owlmobile.
the owl wing. But she's like just remembering all the good days when they used to be the Watchmen, and you could see he's just getting excited just talking to her about it. He clearly fucking misses it. But they go upstairs, they're watching on TV, like, hey, shit's getting serious, Dr. Manhattan's now gone. And Silk Spectre gets up into his owl cave.
Was he a butler named Alfred?
No, but he should have.
Alan Moore missed a good one there.
But, yep, we get more boobs, and we get a sex scene with premature ejaculation and everything. Because remember, the characters in this movie are all flawed. But afterwards, they get back in, and Silk Spectre and Night Owl get back in costume. They go out and realize, like, this building's on fire and save a whole bunch of people. And realize, like, yeah, we should have never given up on this superhero shit like Rorschach. And they end up fucking some more.
For that one steamy scene.
There's more boobs in that scene, by the way.
Yes, there is.
Now, let's get into the prison scene. So, this is Ryan's favorite scene. Rorschach is dragged in. He's brought to a psychiatrist first off. And, of course, the psychiatrist, Vince, a psychiatrist that they are, immediately starts showing him, like, Rorschach flashcards. While he's showing him these, so Rorschach will see one, the first one, and you'll get a flashback of Rorschach where his mother was a whore, and there's like strange men yelling at him. That's what he sees in the card, and it'll tell the psychiatrist, I see a butterfly. Another one where like some kids are bullying him because his mom's a whore, and he punches one of them in the balls, knocks it down, and then goes and bites the other one's cheek off, pulling a fucking Mike Tyson, or was it Muhammad Ali?
Mike Tyson, damn near.
So psychiatrist is trying to help him while he's in prison, and Rorschach just turns the tables on him. Like, it tells him, like, yeah, you became a psychiatrist to help people, but society is sick, and there's no helping me. Like, I'm the cure for society. Then we get my favorite scene in the movie where he explains to the psychiatrist, like, yeah, I used to believe that society completely fixed, but then I realized, like, yeah, there's monsters in society, and eventually people become monsters, which is kind of a allusion to the whole Black Freighter thing. So we get a flashback of he's investigating this missing girl. First thing we notice is like there's like two dogs fighting over something. He breaks into the guy's house, and using his superior detective skills, he finds like, yeah, this girl's probably dead because her underwear is burnt up in the stove. The guy's got a bunch of butcher knives, and when he looks out the window at the dogs, they're fighting over like her severed leg. So this guy killed her, chopped her up, and fed her to his dogs.
Did we say this was a dark movie?
Yeah, this is a really dark movie.
This is indeed a very dark movie. But a great scene to Rorschach's backstory.
But it doesn't end there. So the guy comes home, immediately realizes his door's been kicked in, so pulls his piece out, ready to kill the guy that broke in. Thinks he's cornered the guy, and as soon as, because there's a silhouette behind the curtain, Rorschach left a little fake dummy behind the curtain, and as soon as the guy goes in to see if like someone's hiding behind there, something gets thrown through the window and hits him. It's just the first dog that's dead. Guy runs out the window. Second dog goes through the window, dead, hits the guy. Rorschach comes in, beats the guy up, and handcuffs him. The murderer was kind of smart because he's like, oh, you've got nothing on me. And like Rorschach just pointing out, like, I've got this, throws the girl's underwear, and yeah, I've got plenty of evidence on you. So the guy's using it's like, all right, I'm a sick fuck. Take me to jail.
He thought he was dealing with Batman.
He was dealing with Batman until Rorschach saw what he did to the little girl. That's when Rorschach takes like one of the butcher knives. It's like, yeah, maybe it's just time that we start putting down monsters, and just cleaves the guy's fucking head in two. And we just watch like Rorschach just turn his like head into like a bloody pulp, because like there's no reason to send this guy to fucking jail. But it just goes and shows you how far like these heroes have fallen. One of the things that's common is it shows you like how extreme these superheroes are. So Rorschach's in prison now, and like right away this like midget and his two goons like approach him in his cell. It's like, oh yeah, do you remember me? And yeah, I've been in here for 15 years, and first chance I get, I'm gonna take you out. Pass a little bit of time. Rorschach's in lunch at the cafeteria, and there's a guy behind him that's eyeing him up like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try something. And he's handed a shank, and Rorschach's just like looking around and already has a plan figured out. So guy's getting ready to attack him. Guy starts monologuing. He's like, I'm like the biggest guy in here. I'm tough. And time to deal with you. So Rorschach pounds the guy with his cafeteria tray, busts through like the cafeteria serving table, and grabs the deep frying thing and just throws all the boiling like deep frying oil like all over the guy's face.
He deep fried a man.
Yeah. Guy falls down like screaming in agony, and that's when you get the guards like restrain him. Is like I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Midget approaches Rorschach and like, yeah, we're just that guy that you deep fried. He's gonna die here soon, and when he's dead, that means you're dead. So we watch that the deep fried convict dies, and immediately a prison riot breaks out. So the midget and his two goons go up with Rorschach still locked in. And Ryan, would you like to explain what happens?
I can't really explain it without going into a fit, but it's utterly hilarious.
Ryan, it sounds like your mind's been disarmed.
Uh-huh.
So there's two goons. One of them's like this fat dumb guy, and they're doing some monologuing right before because Rorschach is trapped and not gonna get away. So eventually, like Rorschach, like strategically just like pisses like the fat guy off, sticks his hands through it to like grab Rorschach. Rorschach grabs his hands, breaks his thumbs, and immediately ties the like fat guy's hands to the bar. And it tells like the midget like, well, looks like you're not getting in here. And the other goon who has like this like power grinder is like, oh, we're getting in here, and immediately like takes the thing and graphically cuts like the fat guy's like arms off in order to get like access to like the locking mechanism.
While saying nothing personal, big guy. Well, he cuts his fucking arms off.
It was nothing personal. He was just in the way. So that's one goon taken care of. He comes in and they cut open the lock, and as soon as he comes in, Rorschach just grabs the guy, smashes his head on like the toilet, breaks it. There's water just pouring out, and we see the power grinder that he's using. It's like a split cable, and ends up electrocuting that guy. And then Rorschach gives like this like pun, like gives this like remark. I've never had to flush any like sewage before or something like that. Do you remember the line, Jeremy or Ryan?
It was close to that, but I don't remember exactly what he says. But it is hilarious.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So Rorschach and a midget immediately runs off. But before that, he goes to and visits the psychiatrist who has like all of his face, which and his costume, which is like the well-worn detective type costume. Doesn't hurt the psychiatrist at all, but the psychiatrist thinks like, oh yeah, Rorschach's here to kill me. He's like, no, I'm not here to kill you. I just want my shit back. But after Night Owl and Silk Spectre get done fucking, they decide, yeah, let's go break Rorschach out of prison. They go break into the prison, take care of all the convicts and the one prison guard. And we see the midget run into a bathroom, and Rorschach lets you know, hey, hold on, I need to use the bathroom real quick. Right before he escapes with them. And I thought he was just gonna give the midget a swirly, but like when he comes out, we see blood just pouring out of the bathroom.
The most intense swirly.
All right, folks. So we are getting into the third act here. Jeremy, is there anything you want to say before we get into the third act?
Nope. Please proceed.
What about you, Ryan?
No, I can't wait for this part.
Yeah. All right, so you act like it's gonna be something magnificent.
We're just excited for the song.
Yeah. Yep. So we're gonna get into major spoilers. Like I said, I don't want to spoil like the third act for the audience because it takes like a completely unexpected turn, and the majority of people aren't gonna see it coming. I've been like spoiled over the years where I saw some of it coming, but even then, it still blew me away. If you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and tune out now. You can go tune back in once you've watched the movie. Watch the 3 hour and 30 minute director's cut, Snyder cut version. Yeah, you'll definitely won't be disappointed. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Ring that fucking bell. But we're getting ready to go into the major spoilers. So here's your little song so you have some time to tune out if you don't want to be major spoiled. All right, welcome to the spoiler section.
Welcome, everybody.
I really thought you were starting the Indiana Jones theme again.
I thought it was happening too.
I was like, that's a cop out.
That was the mastery of that was my musical mastery right there. I tricked you into thinking I was starting with the Indiana Jones song, but I used my musical talent to take it in a different direction because this movie goes in a completely different direction.
Get it, folks?
I see what you did there.
So, third act, they escape prison and Rorschach's kind of figured out his pyramid corporation's behind everything. Before he confronts like dead Moloch, he's gotten a badge from them of who he thinks the assassin is, and well, definitely who the assassin was because Adrian ended up killing the guy. He ends up finding a pyramid employee, and confronts him in the bar. While we're talking about the bar, the gang that attacked Night Owl and Silk Spectre earlier, another group of them basically said, like, hey, Rorschach had kicked our asses before, and Night Owl just went and kicked our homies' asses. Night Owl revealed his secret identity years ago with a book, so let's go fuck with him. They go to the original Night Owl, and we get like a intense fight scene there where the original old man Night Owl is fighting with these guys. He's reminiscent, like every time he's punching them, he's reminiscing like about like the masked like supervillains he used to fight, and you're getting the idea that he too misses being like a superhero. But before he can rejoin, that gang ends up beating him down and killing him with his Hero Recognition Award. So the fact that he revealed his secret identity is what done him in.
Shouldn't have compromised.
So we get to the bar scene, and Rorschach is painfully like extracting info out of the pyramid employee. The guy's got like holding like a whiskey glass, and Rorschach just crushes his hand and torturing him by like squeezing his hand to get more of the glass in his. And he's completely spilling the deeds. Like, hey, this pyramid company, we work for Adrian's company. I think you could start seeing where this is going. So they get their info and they're going to like, hey, we're going to go look into Adrian. As they're leaving, like Night Owl's like watching TV and realizes like, yeah, his mentor just got fucking killed by this gang. And one of the gang members is in the bar. So throughout the whole movie, like Night Owl's been like the voice of reason. Whenever the Watchmen got shut down, he just stayed back. Whenever the comedian was beating the shit and shooting those protesters, he was trying to get them to peacefully stand down and talk down the comedian. You watch Night Owl just tackle this guy and just relentlessly beat him to the point where
shit out of him.
Yeah, like he's completely like bloodied and he's like spitting his teeth out, and lets the guy know, let all your friends know that I'm coming for them. Rorschach has to get him to stop. Like, hey, we're in front of civilians. Stop it.
That's why I love the scene so much. Even Rorschach recognized it. This movie does a great job of invoking emotion, or you feel the emotion through the characters. And when you see Night Owl snap, you're like, "Holy shit, it's going down!" Like it was so bad that Rorschach was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we're in a bar. We're in front of civilians, not here."
Yeah, the voice of reason like finally snapped. They go to Adrian's company, and if you don't know, like Adrian's got like this huge like fixation between Alexander the Great and Ramses the Second, who's the Ozymandias. That's his like Greek name, so that's why he kind of went with the superhero name. So they're going through his files and his floppy disks since this is 1985. For people that are too young, floppy disks are what we had before CDs. For people that are really young, CDs are what we had before we had Netflix.
Doesn't Dr. Manhattan also have a floppy disk?
He's got an extra floppy disk. At one point, he has 4 floppy disks.
Thank God he had his mankini on in Vietnam when he was giant.
What do you mean, thank God? They probably would have started. They
They
probably would
would have
have
worshipped him.
really surrendered and started worshiping that giant weenie.
It wouldn't have taken days. They would have just dropped down and been like, "Oh my God, this is God."
It's your fertility god. But they're looking through Adrian's files, and yeah, he's connected to the Pyramid Company. Night Owl's like looking at the finance reports for this company. The company's made like a total like $112 total and some change, and it's spent like over $100 million. You realize that like this whole pyramid company is just like a front for what Adrian's actually been doing. And if you can't figure it out, Adrian's the villain.
Surprise!
So there's a reason we're not mentioning Silk Spectre here. Before Rorschach and Night Owl go on their little adventure, Dr. Manhattan teleports in and grabs Silk Spectre, and they go to Mars, where he's like talking with her about how he just doesn't care about humanity anymore, and really just wanted the best for her. Well, now I didn't mention this about Dr. Manhattan, but now I did mention he kind of ascends like time and space. He can see into his past, but he can't see into his future. And
Well, he can. It's just blocked.
yeah, it's blocked. They should just made it like he can't, because there's no reason to do the whole blocked thing, because I thought that was stupid. But we'll be getting
Yeah.
we'll be getting more into that. But he's able to see into other people's past if they allow it. What he can see is he tells like he knows like Silk Spectre is gonna like plead for him to come save humanity from nuclear Armageddon. He tells her, is like, yeah, this, when you leave here, like you're gonna be in tears. So they're talking, and she starts getting upset that he's not gonna come save humanity, even though he's got like all this power. She's like angry, upset, not crying. She even points out, like, look at me, like I'm ready to leave and I'm not in tears right now. So you lost your humanity long ago. You don't know what it's like to be me. Dr. Manhattan and Silk Spectre agree, like, okay, fine. Let me see what, like everything you've been through. And he goes and finds out her whole past. Now, I didn't mention this before, but we're gonna get into like the scene that's like really important for this. As we mentioned, if I have mentioned before, Silk Spectre, the original Silk Spectre, was in the Minutemen along with the comedian. At one point in time, like after they'd formed, the comedian wasn't in the Minutemen for long, because he tried to rape the original Silk Spectre.
Did we say this movie was dark?
Yeah, like the scene's like really graphic too. But before he can do, as a certain beverage company would say, this other Minuteman named Hooded Justice breaks in and like just beats him to a fucking pulp, and he's kicked out. And you think that's the end of that, but eventually Silk Spectre and the comedian end up like hooking up and having like consensual sex. So if you can't tell where this is going, here, take a second to think for a second.
Spoiler alert. You've been warned.
You've been warned. You were warned with the song.
You heard the song, goddammit.
So the new Silk Spectre, her dad is the comedian. And the reason Dr. Manhattan is completely amazed by her is the chance of her existing is so astronomically low that it's like amazing. And because of that, he sees, because of her like astronomical like odds of not existing, like how important she is that she does exist. So he decides, like, I'm going to come and save humanity for you. We cut back to Rorschach and Night Owl. Adrian is in the Arctic, and he's gone full evil now. He's even telling the audience, like, "Yep, I got this huge master plan. It's gonna save everyone." He kills like all of his scientists
But the
and all
real
that.
question is he evil?
Yeah, we're gonna get into that.
Yes, yes.
So they go crash into his base, and he's got like no guards or anything. He knew Rorschach and Night Owl are totally coming after me. So he just times it perfectly where as soon as they try like attacking him, like he uses his super not specific powers where he's like dodging around. There was a huge fight scene and they can't even land a blow against him. They knew going into this, like, yeah, he's got some kind of superhuman abilities where we might not be able to beat him. So Rorschach ends up leaving like his journal with this right wing newspaper that he always enjoyed reading. And they go on into the mission anyway in order to stop him. So a huge fight breaks out, and they're just getting completely destroyed fighting him. That's when his whole plan is revealed. Now, as Ryan said at the beginning of this video, there's some differences in this movie from the comic, and the third act is really the big one. Whenever I was reading the Wikipedia of this, like I kept on reading like this reference to the squids, and I had like no fucking idea what it was talking about.
There's a giant squid in the middle of Manhattan.
Adrian's plan is different between the comic and the movie. What ends up happening is Silk Spectre and Dr. Manhattan teleport in, and Adrian realizes, like, yeah, Dr. Manhattan can vaporize me instantly, so I'm going to retreat. So Adrian retreats and basically goes down this tunnel. Dr. Manhattan follows him, and he's disappeared except for his giant lynx cat thing. That kind of stops him enough for Adrian to do his
one trap.
Yeah, his one trap, where we see how Doctor Manhattan got his blue dong powers early in the movie, where he got trapped in like a chamber. Well, Doctor Manhattan had been building him a reactor, and inevitably built him the exact same thing that gave Doctor Manhattan his powers. So he flips a switch, and it just completely fries Doctor Manhattan and like his pet cat.
That poor Poos.
I do have to mention Dr. Manhattan kind of reformed himself like over time. I kind of walked away from this like whole movie thinking, is that cat gonna reform itself with god powers and it's just a fucking cat?
Well, if the cat was a professional watchmaker.
Maybe it was in one of its 10th life.
Although that's where I was gonna say it. That's the other reference. We get that whole 5 minutes to midnight thing right before Dr. Manhattan gets his blue weenie powers when he's zapped again. When he's in that room and the clock stops. I believe that's our...
Yeah.
Yep.
I noticed that too. But he's killed Dr. Manhattan and goes back up and faces the other three since the one person that could stop him is now done. Kicks all three of their asses, and we find out, and then Dr. Manhattan just giantly smashes through the pyramid top of the building. And basically states, yeah, I learned how to reassemble myself long ago. Like, you're not going to be able to kill me with that. And so Adrian's like, yep, well, there's my one trap. Here's my second weapon. That's when he turns on the TV. So I didn't mention this yet, but his plan's already been revealed. But I wanted to mention this like all at once. His plan was basically so this is the movie version of the plan. He went and blew up a whole bunch of major cities with Dr. Manhattan energy in order to get the world to unite against Dr. Manhattan. Because the whole nuclear Armageddon thing means nothing if God is basically destroying your cities. It leads to world peace. Like immediately, like Nixon and Gorbachev are like shaking hands, like ready to work together in order to deal with the threat that is Dr. Manhattan. In the comic books, what happens is Adrian releases this giant genetically modified squid in like all these cities and basically gets the worlds to unite because there's like an alien threat against the world, which is kind of like a Mars attacks type scenario.
Doesn't work when I do that. When I do that, I'm ruining my cousin's bar mitzvah.
Ryan, keep your giant squid in your pants.
So this is what Jeremy says, like, is there really villains in this movie? Adrian was kind of built around Spock. This is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Sure, we killed
millions, but did we save billions?
Yeah, like we just prevented nuclear Armageddon. So, what are some lives if we do that? And like that's like the whole moral like conclusion of this movie is they just became like essentially villains in order to save the human race.
The lesser of evils. That's the
Yeah,
moral
so
of the story.
and the whole thing with this movie is these heroes going to extremes in order to be the good guys, stopping bad things from happening. Now, another thing to worth mentioning is now you guys probably noticed that, but like after Night Owl beats up like the gang member for killing his mentor, that really doesn't go anywhere. And the reason for that is that the original Night Owl would have been killed in the Manhattan Blast anyway. And I think in the sequel comic, they Night Owl goes after those fuckers anyway. Aside from that, we see like the kid who's been reading the
Black Freighter.
Black Freighter comic book and the newsstand guy's been talking with all the whole movie. They get incinerated by the giant explosion, and we also see the prison psychiatrist get incinerated too. Now, there's a reason the psychiatrist is in here. Jeremy, do you know the reason? Yes or no?
No.
Ryan, do you know the reason?
No.
Okay, well, I'll get into that. It's an extra spoiler section later. But we are not done with the movie yet. So, all these cities are incinerated and world peace just got achieved. And Dr. Manhattan's like, yeah, you just united the human race against me, and I don't care about humanity. So, that was it's morally gray, but I'm done.
Well, he sees the significance in it. He's like,
Yeah,
well, you used me as a scapegoat, but like you united the world. You can't, he went along with it.
uh, Ryan, do you know what's the conclusion with the squids in the comics? Do you remember?
I don't remember what the conclusion was.
Hmm. Well, if you're like a viewer at home, like please leave a comment because I'm
Let
dying to
us know.
know until Jeremy like reads it and finds out.
It's okay, you guys can spoil
Tells
it for
us
me.
if Jeremy doesn't spoil it for us first. So they've united the whole world against Doctor Manhattan or the alien squid. That's when they're all sitting around debating the whole is the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. Should we just take this as a win? Is leave it? The reason I really like Rorschach is principled. Rorschach realizes like, yeah, this is an evil act, and even though you just saved the human race, I'm gonna be the party pooper here, and I'm not gonna keep this a secret because I'm not gonna go against my principles if it means lying, even if it means the extinction of the human race. So he leaves, and everyone's trying to convince him. It's like, you need to just stay quiet about this. And Rorschach's like, no, I'm not going to stay quiet. And he full fucking well knows what's about to happen.
Never compromise.
Never compromise. As soon as he goes outside, Dr. Manhattan is just waiting for him out there. And they have a small philosophical debate that ends with Rorschach basically doing the never compromise line, where Albert tells him, you're going to have to kill me or I'm going to blow the secret. And that's what Dr. Manhattan does, just makes him explode.
Tell me
It's
that didn't hit you in the feels.
everyone's favorite character, a man who was never willing to bend for his principles.
Unbreakable willpower. Sheer tenacity.
Now, I did mention a little bit earlier, and I'll follow that up here. So, the blood stain that's left on the ground when Rorschach blows up, that's the exact blood stain that was on the sail in the whole Black Freighter story.
As this was my first time seeing the whole Black Freighter content, I did actually enjoy it. Like you mentioned earlier, it's a fun break with the animated stuff, but like it is an interesting parallel to the Watchmen.
Yeah, you're just watching people become monsters. All things come to an end, and we reach the end of the movie where Adrian lets Night Owl like kick the shit out of him for a little bit just to resist his rage, but like this needed to happen for the greater good of humanity. So we're left with Night Owl and his side piece Silk Spectre flying off to become superheroes again. Dr. Manhattan fucks off to another universe, and Adrian's just kind of just standing around. He's saved humanity, and we see that he's rebuilding his corporation's like rebuilding the cities that got destroyed. Now we are getting ready to get into the super spoilers episode.
Do we get another song?
No, I'm all songed out, and we've been recording way too long.
You sang your heart out.
This review's been going on for too long, so let's get into the extra spoilers. The final scene has one of the newspaper journalists drop some like ketchup on his shirt that has like the comedian's like smiley face on it. Since Jeremy mentioned it, it seems like it's going to be like a 5 minutes to midnight type thing. He sees Rorschach's journal waiting for him, and that's when it cuts to black. Now, extra spoiler section of what happens afterwards, because there's not another movie for this, but there is a sequel comic. What happens is Rorschach's journal gets published, which heavily hints that since they didn't fully know Adrian's plan, it hints that Adrian is evil and planning something. But because the world's at peace, because of now in this version there's like the space squids. People just blow the story under the radar, like no one fucking cares. Now, like I said, whenever there's the blast in Manhattan, the prison psychiatrist got killed. His son ends up going like crazy from just the grief of his dad dying in I guess the space squid, and he ends up getting locked into a mental institute. Do you know what other characters in a mental institute?
The Joker.
No, but I'm going to be talking about the Joker here soon.
Ooh, I'm excited.
So, one of the Minutemen, the Mothman, I think was what his name is, we see in the flashback and Rorschach mentions it once, he was locked in a mental hospital. They end up getting locked into a mental hospital together, and the son ends up learning like hand-to-hand combat from the Moth guy. And after he gets out of the mental hospital, he ends up taking up Rorschach's mantle and becomes the new Rorschach.
Pretty badass.
But
Not gonna lie.
world peace only lasts for about 7 years as Adrian's plan comes out. And we get another like 5 minutes till midnight type situation. Because that's when Rorschach's journal kind of becomes more important. And I think, if I remember right, the psychiatrist's son like kind of figures out right away that Adrian was behind the whole thing. Now, if I remember right, DC Comics owns Watchmen, and there has been a crossover with their mainline stuff where Lex Luthor has told Adrian that his plan was fucking stupid. And there's also been a comic book cover where I think it's the new Rorschach is beating the shit out of the Joker.
Like, well, if Batman won't do it, I will. Give me the cleaver.
There's your extra spoiler section.
Those were interesting spoils, though.
Yep. So here we are into the review. Long review, but we have a passion for this. Like, this movie blew me away.
Oh yes.
Jeremy, any final thoughts?
Absolutely one of my favorite movies. Certified Tairimo Boys fun. And again, I do love a good dark movie where it makes heroes, quote unquote, question morality. What is good and bad? This movie is fantastic with that.
Agree. Ryan, any final thoughts?
Certified Tairimo Boys fun.
I'm just sleepy from how long this is going on.
Well, it was a long-ass movie, so we had to do a long-ass review for it.
All right. So, Jeremy, on a scale of The Dark Knight to the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, where would you rank this?
Ooh, I'm going to put it right up there with The Dark Knight.
Ryan?
The Dark Knight versus Superman. Yeah.
That'll be Jack Nicholson, Superman he's fighting.
By the way, are we going to call this the Snyder Cut review of Watchmen?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that is genius. Snyder Cut before Snyder Cut was a thing.
At 41 years old, I am now 67 and have stage 4 cancer.
Been hanging around Dr. Manhattan too much.
Yeah, well, by the way, Dr. Manhattan wasn't giving people cancer.
He definitely wasn't.
Yeah, it turned. Adrian was giving people cancer in a part of his 4D chess type move to get Dr. Manhattan to leave.
Which was great because Dr. Manhattan does not show a lot of emotion. He's a very emotionless guy. God, whatever you want to call him. But
Yeah,
Adrian gets him to show some stuff, some emotion.
my final thoughts, like I said, I dodged this movie for so long. I'm kicking myself in the ass for doing it. Definitely go see this movie if you haven't yet. I'd recommend reading the comic book if that's your thing, and you certainly won't be disappointed. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tairimo Boys podcast, especially this long Snyder cut, especially this long Tairimo Boys cut version. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment. Stay tuned for more Tairimo Boys fun.